50 years ago yesterday, the Second World War finally ended as the Japanese signed the formal documents of surrender on board the battleship USS Missouri in Tokyo Bay. In accepting this surrender, General Douglas MacArthur was joined by representatives of the Allied powers, including the Netherlands. Overshadowed by the scale of the war in the Pacific was the Japanese occupation of the Dutch East Indies and the ordeal suffered by the people of what is now Indonesia. Tens of thousands of Dutch civilians were imprisoned or forced into slave labor. Thousands, including women and children, died. One who didn't make it was a young mother named Haup Tenkate. Imprisoned with her young son, she died in captivity. But her son, Baron, survived. This year, he returned to Indonesia for the first time since liberation 50 years ago. His son, Harry Tenkate, went with him. Harry is a CBC radio producer. He prepared this account of their journey.
Hello.
Here, I think you just have to go knock on them.
Is it?
Yeah.
Hello. Are they home? Ah. Maggie. Hello, how are you today?
Oh ya.
Halo. Terima kasih.
Sudah hancur ini rumah, sudah sampai tahun.
So, Pup, is this house the way you remember it?
Tidak bisa.
Almost exactly. Almost exactly.
You don't need to go there.
You're most kind. Thank you very, very much.
How come? See, you want to see Indonesia again? You're on vacation or something?
We're on holidays. Harry, actually, my son here, came up with the idea about 4 or 5 months ago, saying it's 50 years ago, why don't we? He's not married yet, so he could go, and said, okay, fine, we go.
And my father remembers as a little boy.
Oh.
Look,
Ya.
So this was the main living room where I've seen
That
that
was the
photograph
main-
with Ope in his uniform, his military uniform or something. That must have been just before the invasion.
the Christmas tree that you see me with is in there. Dit was Ope's kankeurtje hier eigenlijk.
Really?
En die foto die je ziet van mijn Dinky Toys, dat was hier genomen.
This was your playroom.
Ja, hier.
Met de kerstmisboom hier, de kerstboom. Ach ja, ach ja. Ik vind het geweldig aardig van u dat we dit mogen zien.
The old family home sits in a neighborhood of wide boulevards and houses of a distinctly European style. Some still have Dutch names chiseled into the masonry, and the gardens brim with vibrant tropical flowers and buzzing insects. Outside, the streets are busier now than on that day in March 1942, when the Japanese invaded. But even now, familiar sounds and smells stir 50-year-old memories in my father. Memories of a 4-year-old boy and his parents, my grandfather and grandmother, Oma and Opa.
When you visualize all this without the noise and without the traffic, maybe my mom and me in a stroller, or my mom and I on the bike. I mean, this was a neighborhood, you'd probably see a few people here and there. You'd see people working in their gardens.
Steve Early, the Secretary of the President, has just come in. He came back from the studio of the President upstairs, and he announced this, that word had just come from the Navy Department that an unidentified squadron of airplanes had been sighted over Guam. A few moments more, the Secretary Early...
The government of the Dutch East Indies has just declared war on Japan. The Dutch East Indies are now in the war on Japan.
But then came the invasion, and with it, memories of a different kind.
Can you remember when you were in this house, 1942, the invasion happened, the Japanese were here, Ope was taken away.
No, but I remember sitting on the patio, the one you just looked at, and seeing an aerial battle taking place in that direction there, and I remember a plane coming down, broken in pieces, and wings floating down like a leaf in the fall time. I'm not too sure, but I think there was even 2 planes involved that both came down.
And for a young boy, there were more terrible images to recall half a century later.
Okay, this is where the rape took place, and that's where the beheading took place, in that living room.
What is that story? What happened?
Chinese friend of Mom and Dad who lived here came home, found a Japanese officer raping his wife. So he jumped on him and started beating the shits out of him, and the guy called for help, and his adjutant came in, and they beheaded him right in the living room floor.
This is while you were still living here.
Oh yeah, yeah. She ended up in a mental institution for the next 25 years, and all she did all day long is sit there and pick fluff out of her blanket.
In the beginning, the Dutch didn't know what to expect from the Japanese occupation. Some hoped they would be allowed to keep working and remain in their homes. But that illusion didn't last. All European men, including my grandfather, were soon rounded up and put in detention camps, separated from their wives and children for the rest of the war. My grandmother, then in her 30s, my father, and thousands of others were packed off to their own sort of prison, a suburb of Bandung, surrounded by bamboo fences. Even today, my father had no trouble finding the place where he and his mother spent the war.
Okay, when I cross that street, we're in camp. The Gedek, the fence, used to run right along the street here.
This main drag?
There used to be guard towers. There used to be a guard tower right there.
So when the fences were around the camps, there was obviously no traffic going through. It was like a pedestrian.
None whatsoever.
Everything was just, you didn't have to worry about traffic, no bikes, nothing.
Yeah. The only thing we ever saw was a Japanese commander's motorbike.
Yeah.
They used to offer kids rides on it. I was not allowed to accept, ever.
Well, your mother wouldn't let you.
No. And that was his house on the corner.
That one we're looking at right there.
Right on the corner. And Mulwi was the guy's name. And if you didn't bow or you didn't have your number on your body displayed somewhere, you'd get punished. And this girl hadn't bowed for the Japanese. She was about 14 at the time, I think. I'd be guessing. But 3 days by her hands and her feet about an inch off the floor.
Behind her back?
Behind
Hoisted
her
off
back,
the ground?
like this.
Yeah.
Hoisted up on that branch there. Not all day long, but 4 or 5 hours each day.
Just as a symbol to everybody else.
It's a symbol to everyone else.
But this is the same square then that you have that horrendous memory of the guy being hung up and actually murdered here.
It's got to have been here.
So what?
The Gedek was on that side,
Yeah.
the camp fence, guard towers on those corners, and everyone stood here lined up. Was a Jap ranting and raving and having a long tirade for
So
a
the
few
whole
hours.
camp was pulled out.
The whole camp was pulled out, and watched the guy get hung. If I'm correct, I think he stole a chicken.
And this was one of the Javanese.
It was the camp commander's chicken. But this is where I lost my teddy bear.
You lost your teddy bear?
My teddy bear.
What, somebody stole it or you?
No, I left it behind. We were shipped out by the Japs so fast that I went back one night. Look at this about ringing tree. God almighty, Harry. How beautiful can it be? Yes, and I was somewhere in one of these houses here. And I went back here to retrieve it, and I was here in the middle of the darkness and never found the bear. Got panicky, it was dark, scary.
Did your mother know you were heading out? No.
She was sick.
You must have, you were in direct contact with the Japanese soldiers and the guards as well. Can you remember whether you were frightened of them or whether you treated them with respect or whether behind their backs you and the other boys were, up yours sort of thing?
Behind our backs we were definitely up yours, but officially we're very respectful, yes. because you could be hung for no excuse at all, or beaten up. Hanging, I guess, was the ultimate. Well, there was a lot of beheadings going on as well, but no, better not to dive into that too far.
But other than that, you didn't have any specific run-ins with them yourself that you can remember?
When we were being transported from Bloemenkamp to Chihapet and had to go through a physical check at the gates, I threw out a little 2-inch pocket knife I had, which is my pride and passion, because I got so scared that I might get hung or beheaded that, yes, I tossed it out. Little sorrows in your life, my little pocket knife. We probably walked by it, rusting in a lawn somewhere.